Welcome to this webinar about foreign motor claims handling. Today we will focus on the Nordic countries. We will talk about how things might differ between our countries, but also how it might differ from the rest of Europe in some cases. Please ask your questions in the Teams chat. We want to have a smooth flow in the presentation, so we will not answer them live. We will answer them afterwards. So these are today's speakers. It will be me, Anders Grotte, from Sweden. We will have Ginny from Denmark and Eero from Finland. And I think I'll let them present themselves a little bit later. So my name is Anders Grotte. I'm responsible for business development in the Scandinavian region. I've been working in the insurance market for 10 plus years now, in different positions, and the last 6 years at Vanomaid. These are the topics I will talk about today. I will talk about how things are done in Sweden. We actually had our Independence Day yesterday, so but yeah, you can congratulate me afterwards maybe. So the agenda for today, we will talk about strict liability. We will dig into truck and trailer, witnesses, and then we'll talk a little bit about claimable costs, rental cars, and also total loss. And then we'll talk about bodily injury claims. Thanks for all the congratulations anyway. Okay, starting up with strict liability. So on the motor third-party liability of the insurance of the vehicle in an accident in Sweden, that must pay the compensation. And the compensation are paid for both material damage and the bodily injury. So for instance, if a car hits a cyclist, the cyclists are entitled to a bodily injury compensation from the car's MTPL insurance. And the idea is to try to achieve fair and quick compensations. We want to avoid these long legal proceedings. And the usage of solicitors are actually pretty limited in Swedish MTPL claims. But as always, there are, of course, some, I would say, rare exceptions to the strict liability. It can be where an accident was caused by the victim's negligence, and it can also be if the owner can prove that the accident was caused by a very unforeseeable event. But I really want to highlight that it's very rare. It's a very rare exceptions, and I want to be a little bit cautious to give actual examples due to that. Okay, let's talk about truck and trailers. In Sweden, it differs to many other countries, and it is that the trailers doesn't need to have their own MTPL insurance, which means that it will be the truck's insurance always that compensates the third-party damages. Which also means that in a case where the trailer caused the damage, it will be the truck's insurance that covers the third-party damages. Still, if a company wants to handle the risk of damages or theft, etc., on their trailers, they obviously need to have a casco insurance to cover for that still. Moving over to witnesses. In Sweden, if a witness should be considered as a valid witness, it needs to meet some certain requirements. The witness need to be present at scene. I think that's fair. I think it's pretty fair. It needs to have a clear recollection of the event. So it needs to be able to tell what actually happened in a good way, in a precise way. And it needs to have relevant information, and relevant is the key word here. It needs to be able to say what happened, and what they say is relevant to decide the liability, for instance. Still, it's not mandatory, it's not required to have a witness to determine the liability. So in Sweden, it's actually the liable part that needs to prove their innocence. And the witnesses can be both passengers and even relatives. That's fully okay to be considered a valid witness in Sweden. And it's actually not up to the insurance companies or TPAs or claim adjusters to question the witnesses and what they say. That is something for the court potentially later on in that case. Okay, let's focus on rental cars. In Sweden, if the other party is at fault, the victim is always entitled to a rental car. And rental cars are compensated with a daily cost, and then 2/3 of the actual kilometer costs. And if the vehicle is not drivable, the compensation is paid for the repair period from the date of the accident. So in case there's no need for a rental car, the loss of use compensation is paid for that period. And the loss of use in Sweden is 25 Swedish kronor, which is something like 2 euros as per today. And it is primarily to cover for insurance and taxes. And as always in life, there are exceptions. And in this case, there are exceptions for taxis and trucks, for instance. And if case there's an actual total loss, the rental car and the loss of use compensation is limited to 14 days from when you know that the car cannot be repaired. And also here, it might be some exceptions. For instance, if the vehicle wasn't drivable and it took a long time to get the information about the actual total loss, that can be an exception to these 14 days. And so total loss, that's when the repair costs exceed 80% of the market value. So we use some criteria to decide if it's a total loss or not. It can be based on the age and the condition of the car. It can be on the severity of the damages. It can be the costs of replacing with a similar vehicle, if that is less than the actual repair costs. And obviously it can also be based on safety considerations. So if there's some considerations on the safety of the car, if you would repair it, then you might consider a total loss. And in case of a total loss, we pay out the actual cash value, and the wreck is sold or scrapped as such. Bodily injuries. The MTPL insurance always cover for bodily injuries in Sweden, which means that the insurance covers the compensation for personal injury and death, regardless of the fault. And the idea is I think it's clear, but it's primarily to protect the drivers and avoid situations where it can get difficult to find a liable part. So to try to make that process smooth when you have bodily injuries. And the compensation is paid from the vehicle owner's own MTPL. And then if there's a third party that is liable, the owner's insurance company can recover the costs from the third party insurance. Required documentations. In Sweden, we need to have at least one accident report. So that is kind of the minimum required documentation to set the liability. We don't need an accident report from both parties, even if that is good, of course, to get a good overview. But it's only required one accident report to set the liability. And obviously we always request for additional information still. But without an accident report and other information such as witnesses and photos and such from third party, the liability can be established on the available information after a certain time. So that is the case. And we also use the 3-month rule. So the third party has the right for a motivated explanation within the 3 months regarding the liability. I see there's questions. Makes me glad. We'll answer them afterwards. And as my last note, in terms of the international sharing agreement, there are actually no more members of ISA in Sweden anymore. I think the last company was Zurich, which left a few years ago. So that is not in place in Sweden. And with that, as my last famous words, I'll hand over to Eero from Finland.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Anders, for your presentation. Now is my time to tell you a little bit how everything works in Finland. As you might know, my name is Eero Suominen, and after my presentation, you will know my name is Eero Suominen. I've been working with bodily injuries and the motor claims for the past 16 years, mainly focusing on bodily injuries. And here in Vandermeer-Krogius, I've been working for soon 5 years. And today's topics are almost the same as Anders had: liability, truck and trailer, motor, third-party liability insurance, claimable costs, and bodily injury claims. So,
Eero, I think you're not sharing your slides, so people are not able to see your slides.
Really?
Yeah. Try again to share it.
It says sharing. Okay, hopefully now.
Now we are. Sharing is caring. Go on.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so shall we go on then? Liability. In Finland, we do have first-party liability. In a case, for example, when you drive a car and hit a tree, your bodily injuries will be covered. Also, the passengers' bodily injuries will be covered. But if you hit your own property, those won't be covered. And third-party liability. About this one, in Finland, third party do not have to witness anything. Insurance companies will order the documents. And about the fault-based liability, companies do need police reports and accident reports and so on as in the other countries, I assume. But it's when we are deciding the liability, it's always case by case. Liability can be, of course, 100% or 50-50 or 1/3 or 1/4, but the decision can be made even based on a photograph and accident reports. We do watch sometimes what kind of paintings there are in the damaged pictures. Can this kind of an accident be possible when its description tells like this? And if the third party is not happy with the decision, third party then can forward all the documents to the traffic insurance board, which is a neutral organization who will rehandle the claim. And then the traffic insurance company will return the documents back to the insurance company, who will continue the handling again. And normally, well, most often they will follow the decision of the traffic insurance board. And in Finland, we do have strict liability, and I have chosen few examples. And the first one is I find it very extreme, where a mentally unstable person runs in front of a truck and tries to commit a suicide. This is a real example which happened. And in this situation, police did stop the investigations because the third party was not criminally responsible for the accident. It's not automatically compensated. Of course, the investigation will happen every time in the same way. But in this case, the third party was in such a bad condition, so the claim was fully compensated. In my other example, there's a child who runs on the street and gets hit by a car. Well, the child ran from behind a pile of snow. And as you might know, the kids do randomly run here and there, and driver couldn't avoid the accident. And in the both examples, drivers couldn't have avoided the accident. And truck and trailers in Finland must have a motor third-party liability insurance. Yes, the truck and trailer must be considered as a single unit. But there are some exceptions. For example, if the trailer is in a miscondition, for example, or the cargo is not well tied, then the whole situation must be re-evaluated again. But if the truck and trailer causes an accident, it's the truck's all the cost will be covered by the truck's motor third-party liability insurance. And in an example where the truck and trailer hits a tree, both of them must have Casco insurance if they want to get covered expenses. And claimable costs. Rental car costs, not automatically claimable costs, and third party must explain groundings in writing. Yes, and third party can contact insurance companies by phone, for example, and normal. Well, if the public transport causes too much harm in everyday life, then the rental car is of course needed. And the insurance will cover 94% of the costs, and there's a 6% excess for the third party. Of course, there are some exceptions again, but I leave them out because this is the basic rule. And there are some situations when the third party live on the countryside, and the third party must go to for example, to the pharmacy. And he or she needs a car, then we can maybe consider if a taxi is enough for that one trip, if the third party do not need a rental car otherwise. But it's always case-by-case study. And normally the rental car must be maximum same size as the owner of the third party's car. And in the total loss cases, repair estimate versus market value, whether repair costs must be approximately 70% of the market value. And then there's a safety reasons, of course. If for example, damaged electrics, then we contact the inspector who will do the evaluation. Shall the vehicle be redeemed or not? But there's another kind of example which I would like to tell you. It's if the third party's vehicle is an older car, then we can agree a lump sum agreement to avoid the wrecking cost, the storage costs, and other documentations. But this is also a case by case, which can be considered if it's a total loss. Bodily injury claims. This is my favorite child for the past 10 years. The liability must be undisputed. Yes, and there's immediately an interesting example. If the third party is on a way to work, then the third party must first contact the workers' compensation insurance, who will handle the claim first and recourse the claim from us afterwards. And this is something which we cannot avoid because this is based on a law. And then when we receive the recourse, we of course rehandle the case, and in some cases we must cover some caps between the insurance companies. For example, the loss of use. If the sick leave's been over a year, then the motor third party liability insurance will cover the cap, because the workers' compensation workers' compensation insurance company only covers 75% of the costs, and there's a 25% cap, so which we have to fulfill. And the bodily injuries must be in causation with the accident. Well, this is quite obvious, and the medical issues can relate to the age. Well, a good example is osteoarthritis, which normally is discovered after the accident, and it's most often relate to the age. And this do causes extra conversation with the third party, but it's something that third party already had before the accident, not because of the accident. This is something we and also you have to remember. And then if new medical information appears, we do have to reopen the case. In Finland, the bodily injuries documents must be stored for 100 years, so it can be there can be a long time gap between the insurance, between the accident and between the new documentation. But it always must be rehandled. And quite normal example could be a whiplash, and after a few years the third party contacts us and tells that he or she feels dizziness, and then we forward the third party to the hospital, and the doctor will do the evaluation, forward us the documents, and we handle the case. But well, the bodily injuries are well covered by the motor third party liability insurance. That's true, but there's also interesting case if the liability is only 50-50, so we do cover 50% of the cost. In some cases, we still have to cover the 100% of the cost. For example, pain and suffer, that cost cannot be split. Or cosmetic harm, it's always fully compensated, even if the liability is 1/3 or 1/4. That I find it interesting, but that's based on the law. And well, good advice to keep on your mind is that, as I mentioned, the bodily injuries are well covered by the motor third party liability insurance, that it is in a way so it reminds of a social insurance. It's not, but it's easier maybe to understand some extreme situations or the examples that I had earlier. And that my last information is about the international sharing agreement, which Finland is not a member. And I would like to thank you for your attention. And next one is Ginny. You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. I am just trying to find my PowerPoint, which would be this one, maybe. Nope. I'm trying again. Let's see. Oh, is it good?
Yeah, it looks good.
Perfect. Okay, great. Well, hello, everyone, and also a very warm welcome from me. I hope you're enjoying our webinar and find it both interesting and educational. I just want to let you know that from my point of view, I can't really see my slides. So, yeah, let's see how it goes anyways. So my name is Ginny Viber. I have worked in the insurance industry for almost 20 years, and almost exclusively with foreign claims. And I have enjoyed the last 6 years here at Vanemide, Denmark. Now, to quote one of my favorite movies of all times, we've got a long way to go and a short time to get there, so let's dive right into it. As well as my two colleagues, I will cover the legal basis in Denmark, how we determine involvement and liability, truck trailer liability, and I will take you through some of the most common claims and how they may differ from how they are settled in your countries. So the legal basis in Denmark is strict liability, which comes from our Danish Road Traffic Act, Article 101, which more or less states that if a motor vehicle causes a damage, it is liable for compensation for this damage. However, we also have Article 103, Subarticle 2, which states that in case of a motor vehicle between two or more vehicles, the liability will have to be determined on the basis of the actual circumstances. So in a way, we have a fault-based system and also strict liability. In case of personal injury, the strict liability applies and every victim is entitled to 100% compensation for their personal injury, irrespective of liability, unless they have acted with intent or gross negligence. In such a case, compensation may be dispensed with completely or reduced. Alrighty. In Denmark, we do not operate with first-party liability because we do not believe that one can become liable towards oneself. So if a driver suffers personal injury, he or she will have to claim against the other MTPL insurer involved. In case of passengers suffering personal injury, they must claim against the liable MTPL insurer, but if liability has not been established yet, they may also claim against the MTPL insurer of the vehicle in which they are passengers. All right. And also, as well as in Finland and Sweden, the ESA agreement is not applicable in Denmark. I do not believe any Danish insurers have ever been member. Okay, and my slide changed. So moving on to determination of liability and involvement. Well, the starting point is the strict liability, where each party is 100% liable. How liability will ultimately be resolved will depend on the main elements that we have. And those are party statements, witness statements, police report, and video surveillance or photos if such are available. Okay. Right. Now, how do we determine whether involvement is proven? This is actually very simple in Denmark. According to the current interpretation of our law, you simply have to provide a registration number and nothing more. I don't believe we have any jurisprudence on this issue so far, but if you, as a victim, provide a registration number of the other vehicle, then you have proven involvement of this vehicle. If you are said to have been involved in an accident, or if you have been involved in an accident, you are legally obligated to provide your personal details and your insurance details, but you are not obligated to provide a statement of facts. However, as I will get into further below, it is definitely in your own best interest to do so. And the reason for this is that, and this only goes for MTPL insurance, but those who remain silent consent. I would also like to note that the European accident statement is not legally binding in Denmark. So even though we might receive a fully filled out and mutually signed accident report form, we will still ask for party statements. And as well as in Sweden, we also operate with a 3-month time limit, which applies from the first notification of loss. And important to remember, This time limit runs irrespective of when we receive a cover confirmation. So let's say I receive my first notification of loss on 1st June. I will then have to determine liability on 1st September. If the insurance company I represent confirms cover on 20 August, this means I will only have 10 days to receive a statement of facts from the party I represent. Otherwise, it's too late. So this is important. Okay. And like I said, you better bring a statement, especially if you do not agree that you are liable, then it is really important that you provide a statement of facts where you explain this. Otherwise, we will not be able to defend your position. So, since party statements are the main elements we use to determine liability, they are also the most important element. And the reason why I will try and show you in this table here, the scenario is that we only have a registration number of the involved vehicles and party statements. No witnesses, no police report, nothing else. So, in the first example, Party 1 states that Party 2 changed lanes and the parties collided. Party 2 remains passive in the belief that, well, the claimant will have to provide proof of liability, otherwise I will not become liable. As you can see in this example, that's actually not at all the case, and the exact opposite will take place. If you do not provide a statement, we will have to go on the first party statement, and Party 2 becomes fully liable. In the second example, they both state that the other party changed lanes. Since we have no way of knowing who is right and who is wrong, and we now have conflicting statements of facts, and since parties are 100% liable to begin with, they both become equally liable, not 100-100, but 50-50. This is how we believe is the most fair division of liability. In the third scenario, the first party says the other one, says we both changed lanes. And the second party says, no, I did not change lanes, only the first one did. This is not a case of conflicting statements, because Party 1 has accepted that he or she changed lanes and thereby committed a fault, whereas the other party denies it. I did not change lanes, I'm not liable. In this case, Party 1 will become fully liable because they confirmed that they changed lanes. In the fourth scenario, they both accept and confirm that they both changed lanes. So it's an easy one. They are both equally liable. And in the final example, Party 1 states that Party 2 changed lanes, and Party 2 states, I have no idea about this. I am not involved. I don't know anything about this accident. In this case, involvement is disputed. And like I said, then the registration number alone is no longer sufficient. In such a case, we will ask Party 1 to provide more proof of involvement and liability. And if Party 1 cannot send us such proof, we will reject liability and involvement and say, well, Party 2 is not liable. Let's see if I have forgotten something. I don't think so. So moving on to witnesses. In Denmark, anyone witnessing an accident and who can provide a clear description of the circumstances and the vehicles involved are considered valid witnesses. Also, if you have a relation to one of the involved parties, but of course, the closer a relation you have, the less weight your witness statement will carry. We also accept witness statements made by phone, so long as the statement has been read and approved by the witness. And in order for any witness statement to be valid, we will need a name and address of this witness. As for police reports, they are very rarely useful for us here in Denmark because Danish police will not come and make a report of an accident if it only concerns material damage, unless the material damage is very extensive. They may show up at the accident scene, but then it will only be to aid the parties in the exchange of information. So very often we do not have a police report with interrogations of the involved parties, which will form a basis for determining liability. And the last element is video surveillance and photos. Usually, these elements will play a part when we are talking about trucks that are loading and unloading goods at ramps or entering, exiting loading areas with fences and gates, or breakaway damages at gas stations. Now, in order for video surveillance or photos from video surveillance to constitute valid proof of involvement and liability, it is absolutely necessary that we can read the number plate from the media, and that the incident itself is also there with the truck or vehicle in question. Very often we will receive a lot of documentation in connection with such claims, such as transportation documents, loading documents, driver's licenses, insurance policies, but none of this constitutes proof of involvement and liability. It only shows that the vehicle was simply there, and of course it had good reason to be if it's unloading and loading goods. And also, the only thing it shows is actually that the driver has lived up to his obligation to provide his information when being said to have been involved in an accident. But this is not proof of involvement or liability unless those previous elements are there. Okay. Moving on to truck trailer liability. In Denmark, a truck and trailer is considered one single unit. A trailer is not considered to be a motor vehicle in itself, and therefore it is not obligated to have a compulsory motor liability insurance. As they are considered to be one unit, trailers will never become liable for damage to third parties when coupled to a truck. So the truck's insurance is 100% liable to third parties, and it will not be able to make a recourse for any part of the amount against the coupled trailer. In case of a solo accident, where either the truck causes damage to the trailer or the other way around, there is a legal right of recourse between the two entities. However, whether in fact a recourse is possible will depend on the insurance policy conditions of both entities, if the trailer is comprehensively insured at least. So we will have to evaluate any recourse claim between a truck and a trailer on a case-by-case basis. Okay. And now that you are all experts in determining liability here in Denmark, let's move on to some of the most typical claims and where our settlement may differ from how you do it in your countries. The first one is repair costs. Now, in Denmark, any right of claim presupposes that you have suffered an actual economic loss. So when we're talking about repair costs for a vehicle, the vehicle will actually have to be repaired in order for you to have suffered an economic loss. If you do not repair your vehicle, you do not have an economic loss and you are not entitled to compensation for the damage. In a lot of other countries, I know that a claimant can receive a cash settlement of the net repair amount, and then they can determine themselves whether they want to repair the vehicle or not. This is not possible in Denmark. The only way you will receive compensation for your vehicle damage is if you provide a repair invoice as proof of the economic loss. This is not to say that there might be Danish insurers who choose to settle differently. They have a right to do so, but the legal merits of this is, as I have said, so you're not entitled to it, but you may be lucky to receive a cash compensation. Who knows? And whether or not a vehicle is considered a total loss depends on the repair limit. We have two different repair limits in Denmark. And if the repair costs are between 65 and 75% of the market value, the owner may choose either to have the vehicle repaired or to declare it a total loss and receive the market value. If repair costs are more than 75% of the market value, it will be declared a total loss. And whoever pays the compensation, whether it be the comprehensive insurer or the liable MTPL insurer, they will settle the market value. They will then own the wreck and sell it for scraps or spare parts. It is not possible for an owner to keep the vehicle wreck and dispose of it as they see fit, because in Denmark, our experts have to ensure that wrecked vehicles are only sold to entities who live up to strict environmental standards for selling a wrecked vehicle for spare parts or scrapping. An owner may scrap his vehicle, but he may not sell it for spare parts. All right. Let's see what we have next is, oh, did I jump one? No, I have some exceptions, of course. So there are some exceptions. A Danish vehicle with a market value under 25,000 Danish kroner, roughly 3,400 euro, is not subject to the repair limits. And foreign vehicles, who are of course not subject to our registration laws, are also exempt. So we will accept repairs up to 100% of foreign vehicle market value. Righty. And finally, we have rental car claims. In Denmark, we only cover rental car if one of the following two conditions are fulfilled. Either the vehicle is used for business purposes, or it is not possible for you as the owner to use public transportation to and from work without great nuisance. If one of those two are fulfilled, we will cover the effective repair time of the vehicle. So we do not cover if a repair shop is waiting for spare parts for an extended period of time, for example. We also do not cover rental car during weekends and holidays. We will deduct 1 Danish kroner per driven kilometer in saved wear and tear of your own vehicle. And if you decide to take out an excess insurance on your rental car, we do not cover that. In case your vehicle is a total loss, we will cover rental car for approximately 2 weeks maximum. Or so you can find another vehicle hopefully in 2 weeks, but that is the period. And that was it for me. So thank you so much for your attention. I hope you found it useful and interesting. And if you haven't already written your questions in your comment or in the chat section, please know that you can also send us an email at marketing@fennomite.com. And now I know there is one question on everybody's minds, and don't you worry, I will share my favorite movie of all time, which is, of course, Smokey and the Bandit with Burt Reynolds and Sally Field. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. All right, that's all for me. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your lunch, which is hopefully shortly coming up. And hopefully I know how to stop sharing. Or do I? I don't think I do.
That's okay, Jenny. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone.